Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about another scandal of a different sort involving the immigration operation crackdown in Chicago. So we've seen Judges Perry and Ellis handle aspects of the actual allegedly unconstitutional use of force there and application of immigration law. And they've been very tough on the administration, issued orders, and the whole sort of mess of should they be there in the first place, and are they completely violating the Constitution on the ground with tear gas and the like, and arresting journalists with and religious figures, etc. That's a whole big eyesore in playing out in two different courts. At the same time, we have a really foul, inhuman, and inhumane detention center, the main one, or maybe the only one. It's become the flashpoint in Chicago. It is the so-called Broadview facility. That's where we actually have already been introduced to it because one of the judicial opinions focused on the abuse handed out to protesters there, and the judge said, but I'm not going to limit my ruling to just this Broadview facility because I don't trust, basically, one of these, would have been unheard of in a previous era, instances of just doubting the good faith of the administration. So therefore putting into place a broader injunction based on findings in Broadview. Okay, but this is about the conditions there, and they are just completely nauseating. This is a place designed to hold people for a few hours before they then ship them out to whatever corner of the country, the federal detention centers, from which point they deport people. And it has been, so there's a lawsuit that calls it, with very good evidence, a black site, that, people are held in squalid and disgusting conditions for days on end. So we had a actual evidentiary hearing, and we had somebody testify. I was there 5 days, and I had to sleep on the floor next to an overflowing toilet, and we had zero privacy. We asked for stuff to try ourselves to clean up the disgusting sanitary condition and the among other things, to have the minimum of bedding or supplies or showers, 3 meals a day. None of it's happening. It's just a torture site, basically. And you had the judge at the hearing say, obviously, some of these conditions are, in my word, disgusting, and that would be the word that any human being would apply to it. And just the sort of complete indifference and the treatment of these people who, almost all of them, we've established this before. Okay, their papers aren't in order. These are not the marauders and murderers that have been advertised continually. And they treat them like less than animals. I think if you found a pet shelter with these conditions, you would be appalled and go to immediately repair it or get something done. And as I say, they had testimony from detainees who just really laid out. So we had one person testify by video. She had to sleep on the floor. She and her fellow female detainees tried to clean the toilet themselves using makeshift materials, no privacy from other detainees or guards. And some of the security cameras appeared to point toward the bathroom. This is a woman who was testifying by video because she has since been deported. Now, the government's claim is they got blankets and water, and that the holding rooms were cleaned regularly, and that there were padded benches available for sleeping. What a progressive, humane government we are. Padded benches, but that is in great dispute. That's what hearings are for, and the judge took account of this different evidence and entered a ruling. And the ruling is, man, oh man, you better up your game fast and significantly. Provide bedding, provide hygiene supplies, provide daily showers, provide clean toilets, and provide 3 meals a day. You know, that would be a minimum at any kind of homeless shelter in the country, right? You know, some food and some way to sleep and some way to stay clean, is really a minimal constitutional requirement when the United States is holding people in detention. It's not, they would say it's not punishment technically, and that gives them all kinds of license in this area, because that's an immigration detention is outside the purview exactly of cruel and unusual punishment as a criminal law matter. But it's quite clear that they have due process rights, and when you take them and confine them, you can't, make them sleep next to overflowing toilets. Okay, what did the Department of Justice order? This is so it's A, ludicrous, and B, again, just such testimonial to their treating the detainees as subhuman. The lawyer said, if you order significant changes to how the facility is run, as he did, it would, quote, effectively halt the government's ability to enforce immigration laws in Illinois. And in fact, the judge said, look, I'm making this as workable as possible to just bring it up to the constitutional minimum. And again, look at what he said. Bedding, showers, it's, and if it requires some kind of, God forbid, plumbing or construction work or whatever, this is to bring it to the minimum that the Constitution requires. So it's really no answer to say, well, if we do that, we won't be able to enforce immigration laws. And second, besides there's no answer under the law, it seems very tenuous under the facts. Really? To have to work fast to make this better, or maybe find another one with the state of Illinois. This is actually a state-owned facility. Other states have federal-run ones, not Illinois. Use another abandonment, whatever. It just can't be the case that it effectively halts the government's ability to enforce law, immigration law in Illinois. And I just want to say what a complete, black eye and embarrassment this is for, the United States, which is increasingly demeaned and disrespected on the international stage. It's such a tragedy. This is we have you could call our record somewhat checkered, going back, but we are the beacon of hope for the world, right? Or that's the notion of the United States, and give me your tired, your poor. Well, no less a moral authority, and certainly a moral authority for millions of Americans, than the Pope. Basically came out and in the manner of papal pronouncements, which are, very dignified and understated, he called the Pope for deep reflection in the United States about the treatment of migrants held in detention, saying that many people who've lived for years and years and years never causing problems have been deeply affected by what is going on right now. And that's a whole nother point, right? This is the debate that was really won in favor of so-called dreamers in the Obama years. People, okay, criminals, marauders, pet eaters, that's one thing, or, they shouldn't be here for sure. And people who, most people in the debate really recognize you can't come in illegally. But now, what if people who have been here and been productive citizens and given birth to American citizens under the 14th Amendment citizenship clause, unless that is undone by the Supreme Court, that we are targeting them in such a martial way with masks and batons and military fatigues, and then sticking them in places like this, hellholes, which probably wouldn't pass muster for treatment of prisoners of war, say, under the Geneva Conventions. And you have the Pope, and recall, by the way, it's got extra punch, right? Because remember, the Pope is Chicago born. This is his hometown. And he's really a strong voice here. I wonder what Catholics in Chicago and elsewhere in the country think, and if they don't take stock of the deep shame that Trump, brings to this country every day. But here is scripture that Pope Leo announced: the question that will be posed at the end of the world. And of course, Trump is all the time talking about God. By the way, bizarrely, I believe I read that he said, I'm not sure, about how I will be treated in the afterlife. A very strange thing to say. But anyway, the classic line in scripture: how did you receive the foreigner? Did you receive him and welcome him or not? I think there is a deep reflection that needs to be made about what is happening. And I'll just echo, as a Jew, there's during Passover, this really strong injunction based on biblical language saying, you must treat the stranger well because you were a stranger in Egypt. It's part of the whole sort of supposed lesson. So anyway, we are completely befouling the entire Judeo-Christian tradition, and so much so that the Pope is now recognizing it. What a total scandal. And so there's now an order. We'll see if they try to seek emergency relief, but I don't see this one as being something that that higher courts could ever countenance. They got to clean up their act, which is just beneath the most subhuman conditions. Again, a place that people should only be for a few hours, and they're staying for days in completely intolerable, unjustifiable conditions. And that order is now in place, and we'll see what happens if they don't promptly comply, as has been their practice in other kinds of instances in this overall immigration area. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.